Hello and welcome to this special report. Today we have NotSoFast.
Hello.
Hey there, what's up? We're going to be asking him a couple prompts, some stuff that's timely, and then a little bit of stuff that's looking forward, and happy to have him on today.
Very, very pleased to get the chance to speak with you, and thank you for your time.
Well, we talked last year, earlier, I think it was in the spring, but it just, didn't pan out before. But today, we are live and we're going to get some audio, so this is good. Let's start with the first question, Tell me your thoughts about the concept of effective altruism.
I only thought about it very briefly when I first read that sort of tweet thread from Sam Bankman-Fried that he published, I want to say last year, where he was talking about sizing up bets and marginal utility of money being, not diminishing when you plan to allocate it to what you perceive to be the greater good. And I thought, okay, this is a little bit, I'm not a psychologist, so I can't say it's narcissistic clinically, but it does seem like a start with a premise of, well, how can I get super, super rich, and then justify it after the fact by dictating that I'll allocate it to charities. It seems a little bit like manufacturing self-royalty, and I don't know whether it's 100% on the level. I mean, if you take it literally, it's definitely a good thing as presented nakedly without any, context or background, or just assuming that it's true. But you have it where, it's kind of a dictatorship. Like, it's the opposite of a democracy where people have input on how they might like to be helped or how they might specify they need to be helped. The sort of underlying assumption is that the person who made the money knows best how to allocate it. And it gives rise to all sorts of questions, whether, is it really, I guess, effective in the most common sense? Is it going to be effective? Is it a way to self-pay? Is it a way to further, personal experimentation? And say, well, at least I tried. If the altruistic attempt doesn't work out, or gets co-opted, or gets misdirected, or sort of used for a less, it doesn't work, for a better way, a lack of a better way to say it.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're saying when the rubber hits the road, things are a little different.
It may not work out as prescribed. But yeah, that's definitely what I'm saying.
All right. So here's another question for you. How do you think entities should balance user growth versus best practices?
That's a really tough one, because I don't consider myself competent enough to make that decision at the scale of the matter at hand, which is FTX that got big enough in financial / monetary size, and definitely zeitgeist size. I don't know how large their organization actually was, but it seemed like they outsourced best practices to whomsoever they might get to do the job, so they could focus on, I guess, super high level risk management, or lack thereof, or just driving the whole concoction forward. And it seems to me like, from my limited perspective of being involved with places with best practices, that it's nice to have something codified, and it's just it can slow down a fast moving entity. The more sort of minute and complicated your practices become. So if it's all dictated and there's a manual, pretty soon people don't or can't go off book because it's easier to just follow the instructions. And then when you're following the instructions, there's no room for the serendipity that, oh, right, okay. So when you're following, I guess, an expanded set of instructions, there's no room for the serendipity that would drive maximum creativity alongside potential for growth or doing something new, creating something that makes a giant leap forward. A lot of that kind of development happens in a space where there aren't very many rules that you're supposed to adhere to.
Yeah, I agree.
So the bottom line for my answer for this question is, I don't personally know from experience. I can only guess, but I feel like when responsibilities to others creep in, you definitely have to put some brakes and some risk controls on the creative exploration part so that it doesn't poison the rest of the operation.
Why is centralization such a dirty word?
I don't think it's that dirty. I wish we could see it as neutral, as just, an end of a simple spectrum between centralization and decentralization. I think when you take it to a certain extreme, or anything to a certain extreme, it's easy to make it a dirty word. And of course, when in the cryptocurrency space, when we're trying to develop things that can run headless on their own, we really want to, we aspire to make them decentralized so that they aren't just a reiteration of what's come before, that we're actually doing something new and developing something new, or developing something old that can run on a headless decentralized system. So it's only a dirty word in this space or this this industry's context, where at the base level, we're trying to recreate existing centralized systems on a decentralized framework. And so if you're making something that's centralized, then you're just wasting your time and efforts and not really moving any further towards the goal. So yeah, I don't think it's a dirty word personally. I think there are plenty of justifications for centralized systems, but there are centralized aspects to things that are also decentralized, like, Bitcoin mining is currently quite heavily geographically centralized to Texas. And that's a weird thing. For a while, it was geographically centralized to the People's Republic of China. And that's an entirely different weird thing. The idea that all those miners and all that mining power could geographically move from one place to another over a relatively short period of months because of one sort of government's decision or decision set is also really weird. And yet we extol Bitcoin as a massive success, progressing along the Lindy curve of further begetting its own success because of its inherent decentralization. But it's not completely decentralized in many aspects. So it's not a dirty word. There are elements of centralization, even to the most decentralized systems. And it is something to be avoided, though, if decentralization is what you're going for.
Can you explain the idea of potential non-technical attack vectors as it relates to your industry?
Wow. Can you be a little more specific?
So
non-technical attack vectors, like social attack vectors, political
right, like
attack
social
vectors?
Engineering.
Got it. as it relates to someone personally being sort of self-sovereign with their own money and assets, or as it relates to systems that people are in charge of, or kind of both, kind of just all of it?
You land on whatever beachhead you like.
Yeah. All right. All right. Because I mean, it's one of the oldest professions, I guess, is, scamming someone in confidence, doing a con. I mean, social engineering is just a codified and fluffed up word to describe gaining and then abusing confidence and trust. And I don't think there's any way to build systems that discount for it, aside from great leaps forward, such as the Bitcoin network, which sort of solved the problem of having to trust each other while participating in running the exact same software, that can be verified. So in a sense, it's really tricky to build off that one great leap forward, because everything we do that doesn't sort of directly call back to that, or anything we build that doesn't directly incorporate provable hash function from that, it involves some degree of trust or central planning that I guess can be co-opted and can be conned, can be affected negatively by social engineering. So it's a challenging thing to describe a set of practices that work against it. It's a lot like, antivirus. Like, antivirus is always one tiny iterative step behind the actual viruses or attacks or whatever, right? Like, there's social engineering and cons and such will always be just slightly ahead of any codified and studyable system that's developed to make them harder to do. And I guess methods for preventing it and combating it all come down to common sense and awareness and attention to what you're doing, and managing your own risk, and being mindful of the who, what, and where, and compartmentalizing trust and recognizing degrees of trust and total risk at stake in any given system or relationship. And that's a lot of mental work and a lot of mental load. And we our mental capacity for that is increasingly taxed. So it's hard to do. It's easy to be tricked.
As we wrap this year up and prepare to enter 2023, what are your sentiments on the future of mining?
The future of mining's kind of interesting because it has been pretty heavily affected by the macro headwinds and the economic headwinds. Once it became a big industry, I no longer became really involved in it because I'm an eternal amateur, I guess. And so what I used to know a whole lot about, I no longer do. I still have some connections to it, but at the scale where it is, it's so far above and beyond the hobbyist expertise that I cultivated. I don't really know, but I do know a few things. There's a window of opportunity now to potentially go back against this trend of launching new blockchains that sort of belong to venture capitalists and a lot of first mover insiders that have sort of gifted it to themselves. And there may be potentially the chance to launch something new that's fair and or build on existing fair systems that give others the opportunity to either get into something early and participate in the upside of network effects for that, or participate in existing systems as they get built out that aren't at the behest of existing and past whales. So there's another factor too of sort of the GPU shortage, and it was pretty prevalent for a while. And now that Ethereum, the formerly largest mined GPU proof of work network, is proof of stake, there's a massive glut of GPUs everywhere and of latent GPU mining algorithm hash rate that has just kind of mostly gone offline and kind of gone to a few other GPU proof of work networks. But they're not really lucrative. But kind of nothing is. Even the Bitcoin mining industry is in the doldrums, and we're rapidly approaching another Coinbase block reward halving. So that, and that's all sort of at the mercy of the existing sort of poor risk-off macro conditions for all of it. And as we have come off of this heady bull market where no ceiling in sight type of thing, a lot of what previously looked like sensible leverage to scale up operations is now very, very risky and not sensible at all. So there's going to be some kind of consolidation, which is not super awesome for decentralization. And it may turn out that the survivors, at least on the mining side, will centralize a lot of the remaining proof of work networks amongst a smaller set of industrialized miners, maybe even an oligopoly. And we see that a lot in proof of stake networks that have solidified their ownership amongst just a few validators that are at risk of chain censorship by collusion between two, or even not even collusion, just at the behest of like one central validator. So no easy answers. It doesn't look any better for the future of mining than it does for a lot of industries right now. But the one thing I know is that the macro moves quickly and narratives drive a lot of it. And as soon as some people start seeing an upside to being greedy during the period of fear and risk-off environment, then they're going to do that, and others will follow, and the cycle will continue.
Well, that's the last question that I have. I appreciate you joining me today to answer some questions and give us your thoughts.
Yeah, really appreciate it as well. Thanks for taking the time.
That was NotSoFast, talking timely about the industry, some of the big news stories that we have been encountering this week, and a look forward. Appreciate you taking a listen. Talk to you next time.